Hey everyone, this part right here is going to be stage one of something that I had been wanting to try. Not sure if it'll work or not, but we'll give it a try and see. First I'm just going to do an alcohol ink painting. This is 12 by 12 Grafix craft plastic. I'm going to use the Ranger ink colors Amethyst, Watermelon, and Aquamarine. This is 91% alcohol in my little needle nose bottle. This is Pinata brass, nothing added to it, just straight brass out of the big bottle. And my most frequently asked question, I'm using my Revlon brand curling brush hair dryer. That's not actually what it's called. Some kind of styling dryer or something, I don't know. Anyway, it comes with a brush attachment, a round brush out through here that I just popped off the end so that I could use this straight up and down because it's so much easier to hold than one with a handle. And it also has the cool setting on it, which is what I use most of the time when I'm painting. Now, the link to this is in the drop-down description box in the Amazon affiliate links that I have down there. You do not have to use this particular model. There are several different ones that are shaped this way that have that brush attachment. Just the only things to be sure of is that it has a cool setting, and make sure you can take the brush attachment off. Although you might get some really interesting looks if you try to, paint with the brush. I don't know, you could kind of brush it around and blow it at the same time. But yeah, just make sure that the attachment's removable and that it has a cool setting. It doesn't have to be this Revlon one, just whatever one you can find. If you find one at a thrift store or a consignment shop, even better, because then you might be able to get it for $2 or $3 and not have to pay $20. This one I'm pretty sure is $20. So, all right. So, back to what I was saying that I was going to do. I'm going to paint today, or right now. I may do this video in two parts, and I may just put it all on one video. Just kind of depends on how long it takes me to get the painting part done. So, I'm going to paint a picture, and then I'm going to mount it on one of the 12 by 12 birch panel boards that I have. And I'm going to resin over top of it, but I am going to add some color, I don't know what yet, probably white, but I haven't decided yet. But I'm going to put some color in the resin and try to layer this. So it'll be alcohol ink on the bottom and then sort of a resin, not painting, but I just want to add to the alcohol ink with the resin that I put over top of it with the colored resin. So what I may try to do is make something like sort of white wispies, coming in or somewhere with the resin. But I have never done that before, so I'm really nervous about that. And I'm really hoping that I don't mess up a really good painting by trying this, or completely ruining one of the birch panels, because they're not really cheap. So anyway, so that's my plan, and we'll see how it works out. And I don't know, I guess by the time this gets posted, you'll know if it's going to be one video or two, but I have no idea at this point. So, all right, well, I'm going to get started on the painting, and I will be back with you all. Okay, now begins the voiceover portion of this video. I had to do this video in several sections, and some of them, I was able to talk while I was doing, but this section in the middle here, I'm doing as a voiceover. I had to split it up into so many different times, and the girls were running in and out of the room, and part of the time my husband was watching an extremely loud movie, so you probably didn't need to hear the explosions and things going on in the background. So, all right, I started out by, I just, wanted to make an alcohol ink painting. Now, I wasn't trying to make this one just tremendously wispy on the sides, because I had my plan of when I poured the resin, putting some white alcohol ink around the edges in the resin and kind of blowing it in towards the painting. So, you know, I wanted my sides a little bit soft, but I didn't really care about taking the time to make them super, super wispy. Also, if you may notice, this is sped up just a touch. The parts here where I'm doing the voiceover, I did speed them up just a little bit. Partly because it's kind of, all of this is things that you've seen me do before. There's not really anything new until I get to the part where I add the resin and the alcohol ink with the resin, which I did do live as I did that part of it. So you'll get walked through that. But I figured this was a better way to just kind of give you an overview of what I'm doing. And you can slow down videos on YouTube. I cannot remember which of the little things you have to click now, but there's something in the box that if you want this part slowed down, that you can actually lower the speed, or raise the speed for that matter if you want it to go by faster. Although you'll hear my voice going, so you might not want that. So I was trying to get a look that was similar to, let me think, I can't even think. The ones that I've done where it's sort of ombre, I guess, where I start at the bottom of my paper and work my way up with the colors and, you know, have it wispy at the top part of that. But I wanted to do it. I didn't care about having that sort of ombre look. I just wanted to have it a little blockier in the middle. I wanted my colors to be blended, but like I said, I wasn't concerned with keeping individual colors small with sections small. I wanted bigger sections for the color in the middle. So, like usual, you know, I put down the I put down the ink, and then I would put down my brass, the Pinata brass, on top of the ink, and then squirt a little bit of alcohol to from the side normally to kind of help lift that brass up just a little bit, help keep it floating some. And then, you know, went back here, is what I'm doing, and trying to soften up the edges a little bit. You know, I didn't really care about having them super just faded out to nothing, but I did want to have them softened up quite a bit so that whatever white I ended up putting on the edges would sort of end up flowing over top of it. So there wasn't a really strong delineation there where you might be able to see it through the white very much. It was a little strange to me because the whole time I was doing this, I was trying to keep in mind what I was going to be doing to it later so that, you know, like I say, I left enough room around the edges to make sure that I had room for the white, but also I didn't want to leave too much room because I didn't want to have a ton of the white in the resin, and, you know, make sure my edges were soft enough. And I had a lot of different things going through my head as I was doing this. And you'll see here in just a few minutes, I really got very unhappy with this. I did not do a good job with blending the, I've already forgot what color I used. Stream? I don't even remember. I'm sorry. I said it in the beginning of the video, so you can go back and watch and see which one it was, because turquoise maybe. Anyway, I did not do a good job of blending with the coral, and things got really muddy looking there in the middle. It did not turn out, it was not turning out a pretty color. It was just kind of blech. and I was getting a tremendous amount of buildup. There was one point in here where I was trying to put just a drop or two of brass, and I think I ended up, it just like squirted out of the bottle, and I got way more than I intended. And I didn't want all that buildup in the middle either, which is what was giving me the color, the kind of just black, brown, gray, green, weird color that I did not want. So it's not quite there yet, but fairly soon you'll see I ended up wiping out part of this. Now, this is something for you all to keep in mind. If you are struggling on a painting and you notice you've got all this goopy buildup in the center, or it's not a pretty color, you'll see what I did here. Well, not right here, but not right this second, but you'll see it in a few minutes. I just took some alcohol and I didn't wipe the whole thing. I just wiped out part of it. The parts where it had started building up the most was what I really was trying to get. So I could get especially some of that extra brass out of there, because that will really goop up your painting if you get too much of it built up in one spot. Now, all of you all who've watched me before know I love my brass, my Pinata brass. I use a lot of it in my paintings. I love the shimmer and the shine. But if you don't get it spread out good, then it does leave you this dark, just kind of goopy mess if you're constantly pushing everything back towards the center. And these colors that I used in this are ones that can be a little bit tricky sometimes anyway. The coral and the turquoise, which is what I'm going to call it because I can't remember what it was now. You can make an okay color out of the two of them, but if it will get to be this sort of grayish color. So you see, I flipped the camera off for a minute because the more I looked at it, the more I did not like it. So there you go. Now you see what I'm doing. I just squirted some alcohol on it and decided to start cleaning that up a little bit. And I took out a bunch of that coral because it was just too dark. That was part of my problem with why it didn't blend good with the turquoise, is I got too much ink on there to start with. So, when you do something like that and you just don't see any way of salvaging the painting, you can always wipe the whole thing unless you're using UPO, which will stain. This was the Grafix opaque white craft plastic, so it hardly anything will stain it. It can stain, but there's not much that will stain it. Just put some alcohol on, take out part of it if you don't want to wipe all of it, which, I didn't feel the need to wipe all of this one, and I did want to leave this part in so that you all could see. Oh, that's right. Okay. I know what I did now. As soon as I saw that color, I wasn't using coral. I started out using watermelon. The watermelon was not the color I meant to use. I had meant to get flamingo to start with. Watermelon is a more red color than a pink color. And I had meant to get flamingo, and they're sitting right beside each other. And I picked up the watermelon, and so I was like, well, I'll just go ahead and use it. It should be fine. And so that's what I started out with. But yeah, the longer I went with it, the less I liked it. I like the color. I didn't like it with this. It wasn't blending well at all with this. It's got just a hint of a reddish coral color, I guess. I don't know. But the flamingo is more of a pink. So I did swap out and get the flamingo. I'm sorry. I really have got to start trying to get to these voiceovers quicker so that I can actually remember what was going on in the painting. It's actually been over a week now since I finished this doing all of this on this painting, even the resin and everything. So, and this part of the painting was 2 weeks ago, because I had to get it painted and then let it set to make sure everything was dry for a couple of days, and then do all my coats of sealant on it to get it ready to resin, then let it set and dry for a few more days after that. So it was a rather long, involved process, just getting bits and pieces done here and then having to wait for it to be ready for the next step. So, but anyway, I could have gone ahead and done the voiceover for the painting part right here, and I should have, so while it was still fresh in my mind. But that's what I did. Now that I saw that, where I showed the color up there, that I was switching to a different color, that rang the pathetic little bells in my memory that don't work so good anymore. So, bleh. All right. And I just continued on. Just, keep on spreading it out. I wanted it to be fairly soft looking, but I also still wanted it to have a reasonable amount of color, just because I was a little concerned about since I'd never done this before with putting alcohol ink in resin and blowing it over the painting, I wasn't sure how much of it was going to blend and kind of drift over top of the ink part of this. So I did want to keep it dark enough to be seen if some of the white that I was going to put in the resin drifted over as it sort of settled and moved around a little bit. One thing that you'll see me do on this one that I don't think I have shown you all, I can't remember if I've shown you all this in any videos or not. You'll notice I'm not blending this a ton right now. I had planned already to go back with just the brass and some alcohol and blend using that. I have started doing that in some of my paintings, and if you want extra brass look, extra shine to your paintings, that is absolutely the way to do it. And it will leave a sheen over the entire painting. And we'll get to the part here before too long where I do that, but I'll go ahead and tell you, you pick a spot to start and put down, 3 or 4 drops of brass. It really just depends on how much you want on your painting. You don't want to just completely lose all your color, so I wouldn't go with more than about 3 or 4 drops. But put down 3 or 4 drops of brass first. Then put your alcohol down on the brass, but use probably at least 2 or 3 times more alcohol than you would normally use. And then do that as a wash, sort of. I blow it out sort of as a wash over that whole section of the painting that's, surrounding where I put it down at. And I pay careful attention to the lines where colors meet, so that I can make sure that I blow around. Let me think how to put this. I'll try to pick one of the colors and blow the brass and the alcohol off of it onto the next color, and it makes a really nice fade and blend. I'm sorry, my voice may be going in and out. I keep moving my hand. I can't talk without moving my hands. So I sit here and talk to you all, and my hands are just waving all over the place while I'm doing it. And I'm like moving them, like showing things blending and spreading out, and it keeps going in front of the microphone. I just realized I was doing that, so hopefully it's not affecting the sound. I'll try and keep them still, which is probably going to last for about 2 seconds. Oh. So anyway, yep, there. I already picked up my other hand. I put one hand down, I picked up the other hand and started doing that again. So So yeah, that'll give you a nice fade, a nice blend together of your colors. But you have to be really careful doing this, because if you try to blend it too much, I mean, you're just going to end up with mud, and you don't want to blow this brass and alcohol all into one spot. This is like, think of it as a coating over top of everything that you've already done. Something, and even off the sides too. I've got things that I have done where I will, like the white that's around the edges, the negative space that I've left, I will start in that, and I will blow the brass and the alcohol, I'll just sort of wispy it out all in the white and work it all into the painting until like the entire substrate and surface is covered. It does take, quite a bit of the brass and quite a bit of alcohol to do that. But it is really pretty. If you do it, you get just an incredible amount of shimmer and shine on your paper. It just kind of depends on what your taste is. If you like a whole lot of the gold color, then that's one way to achieve it while in your painting, is to do this kind of, I don't know what else to call it except kind of a wash, because you're putting a whole nother layer over top of what you've already done. But like I said, just be real careful. Don't overblend when you go back to do this layer. Your goal is not so much to blend with it as it is to just spread it out over top of everything. But just be aware as you're spreading it out that you also can use it to sort of soften the delineation between colors, and give yourself a nice little blend in there. And I think that, yeah, this is where I started doing that. I don't usually start in the center of the painting. I usually start at one side, but for some reason I started in the middle today, or then when I was doing it. And you might even see me occasionally flip my little button on my dryer over to heat just for a minute. I won't leave it there because it will buckle your paper. Now the Grafix craft plastic and the heavyweight Yupo are really good to flatten back out as they cool, as long as you haven't just severely warped them, to the point where your paper's actually melted, not just warped a little bit. But I try not to do that anyway, because it makes little peaks and valleys in your surface, in your paper, and the ink wants to run into it. It makes it much harder to kind of steer your ink to where you want it to go. I was just trying to make sure that I had some of it dry. You will have to be real careful with this, because you do get some buildup in places of the brass, and so it's a little tricky to not end up with just big blobs of dark looking brassy ink here and there. You just have to be careful to make sure that you're not pushing it all towards a central spot all the time. Do whatever you can to try and spread it, and keep it spreading until it's just dry. But anyway, that's why I will occasionally, when I'm doing this, I will flip my dryer over on heat just for a minute, just long enough for the airflow to warm up more, and then I'll flip it back to cool. And that way it does help dry the alcohol and ink faster here, so it doesn't have as much time to blend with the colors underneath, because I don't want to pick up a lot of those colors. I just want just enough to blend them into each other, but I want this to dry pretty quickly, so I don't have to keep working it as it dries. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes it's really difficult for me to tell you all exactly what I'm doing. It's like I know in my head what I need to do and what I'm doing, but trying to explain it is a whole different thing. Putting words to it But you can see on the, the part where the light is really shining on the painting already, you can see how much of a shine that gives it. I mean, you actually, I almost overpowered the color in this one with the brass. It turned out really, really good in the end, but I was a little bit concerned to start with that I might have used a little too much brass, but it ended up looking really good. So it was fine. Now you see how much, I hope you all can tell how much of a squirt of alcohol I'm using. Oh, also when I do this, I will go back and just put down alcohol, but I only do it in the places where my initial brass and alcohol puddle is still wet. I tried to not go back with only alcohol to soften places that were dry, because then you lose a lot of the brass that you had already put down, and it doesn't match the rest of your painting after that. It blends the brass in more rather than it floating. You'll know it if you do it. You'll know what I'm talking about, because I don't know any other way to explain it to you, but it does cause the brass to blend with the ink a little bit more. You still have some kind of shimmer and shine, but it just looks different than the rest of the painting. And the times when I've had to do that to fix something, I've usually gone back over it again with brass and alcohol again to help with my blending after I've fixed whatever it is that I felt like I had to just use alcohol to fix. Now, you'll see sometimes I put the alcohol and the brass, at the edge on the white. Sometimes I put it in the ink that's already down. When I'm working on the edge, I generally try to put it right at the edge of the ink where it meets the white, and do it the same way that I would if I were doing, wispy. I'll put it at the edge and blow it in over the ink, and then blow it back out a little bit, then blow it back in towards the ink again. But sometimes, depending on where the ink was and how hard of an edge I had with the ink, sometimes I'll change that. There's no set in stone rules for this type of painting. It's just, whatever works for you and whatever works for the individual painting that you're working on. Because I will change certain things that I do just constantly depending on the look that I'm trying to get on a certain painting, or just I will see something that I don't like that I want to change, and I might use one technique to do that one time, and I might use a different technique to do it the next time. It's tricky. You just kind of have to play it by ear and see what works best for the painting that you're working on. I wish there were easier ways to tell you all how to do some of this, but that's one reason that it's kind of hard for me to tell you, because it's not always the same thing that I do. It just depends on the painting and, what look I'm going for. There's several factors that play into what I do at certain times. And practice is the only way that you're going to figure that out. Practice, practice, practice. If you're not happy with your paintings and the way they're turning out, then you just need to practice. I wasn't happy with mine in the beginning. I never turned out one that I liked in the very beginning. And I went through a ton of photo paper, just practicing on the back side of glossy store brand photo paper, like Kirkland's from Costco or Office Depot, Staples. Their store brand of glossy photo paper not name brands. Now, not HP or Kodak or any of those, because most of those have a watermark on the back. And you absolutely have to use the back side if you're going to try practicing your wispies. In a minute, Maddie, while I get done, okay? Sorry. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, the photo paper. So that's what I recommend for all of you who are wanting to practice, who aren't happy with the way they're turning out yet. Don't spend your money on Yupo or on even on the craft plastic. It's, even though it's cheaper than Yupo, it's still more expensive than photo paper. But be sure you use the back side, not the glossy side, because your ink will not move on the glossy side. If you haven't seen my little video where I show you that, I have no idea what number it is. It's back down pretty many videos. But that, you know, if you want to see what happens, watch that video, because I showed that to you all, or, you know, did a little demonstration, because I had figured out that was I mean, so many people would contact me, and not just me, but I would see posts in Facebook groups, and I still am, from people saying, well, I'm trying photo paper, but my ink won't move. It just sort of sits there and dries up in a blob. And it's probably because you're using the wrong side. You cannot use the side that you print on. That side is made to absorb ink and to stop it from moving. Because when you print, obviously, you want your ink to dry instantly, soak into the paper, dry instantly. So that's what that ink will do, or that side of the paper will do. It stops your ink from moving. So if you want to paint, use the back side. Your ink will move almost exactly the same way on photo paper as it does on the craft plastic, or the Nara synthetic art paper and things. It will move almost exactly the same way. And photo paper can stain a little bit, but it doesn't stain as bad as Yupo. And it's actually a lot of fun to work on. And if you do turn out a great painting, awesome. Photo paper is made to last. You know, it's not going to be hanging in a museum most likely, so who cares if it's on photo paper? Photo paper is meant to last, so, you know, frame it and keep it, or sell it, or whatever. I mean, you might not want to sell it for quite as much as you would something that's done on a more expensive substrate, but there's no reason why it's not as good of a painting just because it's not on a piece of Yupo that costs, $3, and instead of on a piece of photo paper that costs 5 cents. So just my opinion there. So practice. Even if you're already good at it, if you want to try a new technique, get out the photo paper and practice. That's what I do. I keep photo paper here, always. I always have photo paper so that I can play around on it if I want to try color combinations, things like that. That's what I use because it's so much cheaper to mess around with. All right, so let me show you all this now. You can see that brass by adding that extra brass over top, just how much shine it adds to the painting. I mean, it makes a huge difference to me and how much shimmer and shine you get. All right, so after this, I did let it dry good for a few days. Then I sealed it with the Kamar by Krylon, the Kamar varnish spray. And then I sealed it again with a few coats of I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing right there. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'll tell you in a second. I sealed it again with the UV Archival spray by Krylon with several coats. All right, so I got all intent on what I was doing and mixed up my lids for my ink bottles. So there's how you fix it. Put a couple of drops of alcohol on a little Q-tip swab and just swab it around inside your lid so you can tell what color it is. because you don't want to mix your lids up, and possibly you could change the color of ink inside the bottle, depending. You don't want to put like a dark purple lid on a pink bottle. You may darken up your pink or something. All right, next step, this is just a wooden cradle board. Just a 12 by 12 birch cradle board that I decided I wanted to stain. I didn't want to leave the wood natural, but I didn't want to darken it up too much for this one. I kind of wanted light colored stain on it. And this is really kind of funny. You all might not even notice this if I don't tell you. I should just probably not even mention it. See how many of you can figure out what I did after you finish watching this video. Because I got mixed up. I had this video, I was working on 2 projects at one time. This one that you're watching now, and the one that I posted, not the last one that I posted, not the round one, but the one with the stencil embellishment on it, the shape. You can see it. You can still see it on my mat here. I need to change my little pad that I've been painting on. So I was working on both of those at the same time, and I had decided that I wanted to finish the entire board on one, because I was on the stencil one. I was just kind of afraid that it might show through where it was light in the middle and dark at the edges. I wasn't sure how good it would be hidden when I put my paper down over it. And because on that one I did, trim my picture up so that I had wood showing. So I knew I was going to have a line of stain around the outer edge, sort of like a frame for the painting. So, but I did not do that on the board that I was fixing for this painting. The board that I fixed for this painting, this is what I did. Or no, this is actually the board that I think ended up going to the other painting. The one that you've already seen the video on with the swirly embellishments on it. So you'll see I got the clips mixed up when I was going through and editing and picking out which clips went with which projects that I was working on. And so this board that you see me staining right here is not the board that this painting ended up going on. That would be the board that's sitting off to the side there right now, waiting for me to get to it. So, and I may have used the staining of that other board in the other video. I don't know if I got the right one in it or not. I can't remember now. The wood stain I used is just a Minwax. It doesn't really matter what the brand is. I just used Minwax. Just, a regular standard wood stain. Yep, look, see, there you go. You can tell I switched things. The name of the color that I used for this painting was Ipswich Pine. But, pick a color. One of my other colors that I love is English Chestnut, which is a darker color. All right, so I decided to go with Mod Podge on this one. It works so much better than that Elmer's, whatever that stuff was, the Elmer's spray adhesive that I had tried before. The Mod Podge works much, much better. I got a much smoother surface on my painting when I did that before with the Mod Podge. So that is the way that I will continue to go from here forth, is the Mod Podge. If I'm going to be resining over top of it, that's what I will use. So I just, I put a thin layer down and then laid the painting on it. This, you all have seen this before on another video. So I just, put it on there, mashed it down, and put a piece of parchment paper over top of the painting. And then, I can't even remember what I used. We'll see it here in a minute. But I used it to smooth out, put the parchment paper over and slide along your parchment paper, pushing all your excess Mod Podge out to the edges so that you can clean it off then, so that you don't end up with any uneven bumps or anything in your paper where you've got too much built up underneath it and it's not good and even. We are coming to the end of this, where I'm going to be doing this voiceover it in just about, I don't know, 2 minutes or so. It's going to get to the part where I start doing the resin. So I hope you all enjoyed this part of it. And you can see there, I'm just with the parchment paper smoothing it out. Oh, there we go. I used a craft stick and just kind of tried to make sure I got off any, or, scraped out any excess that was built up underneath there. So, well, thank you all for watching. In case I forget to tell you in the next section, I hope you enjoyed it. I was really, really happy with this painting, so I am hoping that that you all will give this a try on your own one day. All right, well, I'm going to go for now because I will be back with you in just a minute to start the resin portion. You've got about maybe 1 minute left, so I will see you in the resin portion back in time for me. Okay, so it is time to finish up this one. I went ahead and mixed up the resin before I turned the camera back on, just because I wanted to, this is already running into a really super long video, so I wanted to go ahead and cut out what I could of it. Let me shut the door so before the girls walk in. I taped up the sides. Well, I already had the bottom taped, put my things in, taped the sides because I am going to put some white in this. This is going to be a new thing for me. We're going to see how this goes. I want to pour the resin on, and then I'm going to take some white alcohol ink and try and move it around with my heat gun and see if I can get something that's just sort of like thin, wispy clouds sort of here and there over top of this. I may be ruining a perfectly good painting and a perfectly good panel board by doing this, but if you don't try, you never know. So I'm going to give it a shot and see what happens. I used art resin for this, the art resin brand, which is just a 1-to-1 ratio. However much you're mixing up, you use equal parts of the resin and the hardener together. I've been mixing this now for at least 5 minutes, so it's about as good as it's going to get. I let it sit in a warm water bath for about 30 minutes before I started mixing, measuring and mixing to soften it up, loosen it up. I don't know what term I'm looking for here. It will make it get runnier as it gets warmer. Although there's a trade-off in time. If you get it too warm, then your resin is going to start to get hard or too hard to work with before you can get finished with what you're doing. So be careful not to get it too hot. And you don't want it hot. You just want it warmed up. so it becomes more fluid. There, that's the word I was looking for. More fluid. And I did mix up extra. You'll see I have quite a bit left in there. If I get done with this in time, I'm going to I have a painting waiting that I just need to put a coat of clear resin on. So I went ahead and mixed up the extra, hoping that I would have time to get to it before the resin sets up too much. I'm hoping I don't get too much run over, like under my tape here. I'm a little concerned about that, but I can always sand the edges back down. I just did not want, because I'm going to put the white in there, I didn't want to have just sort of messy spots of white that had run, you know, over the edges. Now, if I had painted the edges white, I wouldn't worry about it, but I had left them just wood, so I don't want to do that. And this is, I'm putting this on here a little thicker than I normally would if I were just going to coat a painting. I wanted to have room to move to make sure that the white ink that I'm going to put on here in just a minute, you know, make sure I have room for it to move and spread and things really good. And I just realized that I forgot to level this. I always check with the level so I don't end up getting a puddle on one side or one end. If you're doing this, make sure you get those corners and these edges. Get my stick back out of there. You don't want to pull your tape off and end up having a hole somewhere where the resin didn't go all the way to the edge that you just didn't notice. Which is what I'm doing with my stick now, just making sure that I've got it pushed all the way to the very edge of the tape, because I actually could see a couple of spots that I had missed getting the resin pushed over far enough. I'm having a really hard time telling. The way the light is in here, it's not shining into the tape there where I can see, you know, what's shiny and what's not, maybe. Be able to tell where the resin needs to go still. So, yeah. Spot or two, I think I pushed the resin back out instead of pushing it in. And after I do this layer, assuming this works and everything turns out decently, once this dries, I will put another coat of resin over top of it after I peel the tape off of the sides of this. I'll go over with a whole nother coat of resin, just in clear, to just cover the sides of it and just put an extra layer over the top. I'm wondering if this resin does not like this tape. There's a spot or two it just keeps pushing back. So, alright. Let me get a few bubbles out here before I start. If you do this, be really careful. You don't want to melt your tape. Also, you do not want to scorch your resin, which it will scorch, so be very careful. Trying to see if I got it fairly level. I hope. I hope. I do not want to touch it with level at this point. Okay, so I'm just using the Jacquard Pinata Blanco color. Blanco color. Maybe I am. Maybe I should have loosened my lid before I got started. There we go. These gloves did not want to grip on that lid. And here is what happens if you get lids mixed up. I did not know I had done that. I do not know how I managed to do that without noticing, unless I was in some kind of huge hurry. That is bad. So hopefully I have not contaminated my white alcohol ink with blue. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I used this white, honestly. So, alright, so I'm going to start over here at the side, I think. I'm just going to put a couple of drops and let's see what happens. I don't know what I've got this set on. It's somewhere right in the middle of its heat setting. Oh, wrong thing. Hope y'all can see that. It's kind of moving, but not as much as I wanted it to. I'm going to put a little bit more, and then I'm going to put just a little bit of resin, I think, on top of that to kind of help it move a little bit. Probably a good thing I mixed up this extra resin. I may end up using it all before I'm done. So, sorry, I'm kind of moving this around so I can get the resin just a little bit deeper here and there. This may take longer than I thought it would. I wasn't really, because I've not done it before, I didn't know what to expect really, so. Put a little more over here. We'll start out with a little extra resin on it this time, see if that helps a little bit more. Now, they do make resin tints that you can use, and I should have done that. I actually have some. Art Resin makes resin tints that are specifically to mix with resin to give them color without worrying about changing the consistency of the resin to where it won't set up good. And I should have probably done that, but I just had an alcohol ink on my brain. I'm sorry, I know that heat gun is loud, y'all. I just can't really. I probably should have planned on doing a voiceover on this part, but oh well, it is what it is, and something just fell off of my finger into my painting. Hopefully that will not leave. And I just saw a little dimple appear in the painting all of a sudden, so I'm hoping that that won't stay as this dries. I startled myself. My cord just scraped against this box I've got my stuff sitting in, keep from getting it on the table. I don't know if y'all saw me jump or not. It startled me. I was very intent on what I was doing. I'm such a goober sometimes. Alright, so I'm going to try and do a bigger spot at once this time because I'm getting a little concerned about my time. This resin, and I'm going to have a lot of resin on this painting. Way more resin than I intended to have on it. And if any of you all who have used resin know, it is really expensive. So I did not mean to get that much on there. Trying to get this to flow that way just a little bit better. Although I'm starting to feel like I'm covering too much with the white, but it's kind of like, well, now that I've started, I kind of got to keep going. Alright, I'm just going to try and finish all this at once over here, I think. Trying to get that in there behind where the ink is. I got it a little too close to the tape and I wanted to push it out just a little. So I definitely do not have this level. I definitely have some pooling going on at the edges. I'm going to have to see what I can do about that before I leave it to dry. Okay, so I already see one thing I did wrong. Well, probably one, but the biggest thing I see right now is I used too much white. I definitely put too much ink in there. I would have done better to have worked it a little longer, trying to push out some of what's on the edges over here. But it's also very cool looking, so, you know, I can live with that. I mean, it is a little more than I wanted. I'm putting this in here now in hopes of pushing back just a little bit of some of that. Trying to get to where I can see some of my color again. I am not a resin artist. I definitely do not have experience with resin. I'm not the one to watch for this. But I just thought I would share my journey with you. I absolutely love the way that resin, oops, well, I fixed that. I love the way it looks on an alcohol ink painting. It just does incredible things to your painting. Brings out the colors so much. So I am going to keep on using resin more often, but yeah, I definitely have a learning curve here. Some over here. I may end up with a 2-inch thick layer of resin on this one. I'm not going to be able to sell this one because the stupid thing would end up costing $100 for a 12 by 12 painting, considering how much resin's in this. Well, there went my extra resin. So much for doing the other painting. Alright, so as I blow that back, it's going to slowly drift out back towards the middle again to fill in, and that'll pull the white back out some. So I'm hoping it doesn't pull it back too far, which is definitely a possibility, you know, and covering up too much of the painting, since I did get too much white in there. So that I'm just going to have to wait and see what happens, because I just don't know what it's going to do. And I have overworked this a little much, probably. But there's what you get when you got a newbie that has never done it before. So, I sort of got the look that I was going for, but I got a little too much of it. So, there you go. I'm afraid to move this around too terribly much at the moment. But you can kind of see it covered up more of the painting the color there than I wanted it to. So, we'll just have to kind of see what happens with it. And hopefully as it dries, it won't, sorry, just kind of making a few little, nah, don't like that. Hopefully it won't drift out too far as it dries. Alright, well, that is it for this one. Once it is dry, I will come back and show it to you all to end this video up with it, with a picture of it while it's dry. I'll be back, well, shortly for you all, probably in a day or two for me. Be back with you in just a sec. Okay, so it's done, it's dry. I had planned on showing this to you all before I took the tape off of it, but I had a little issue with it as it started to dry just, 5-10 minutes after I stopped the last section of the video. The white was moving in so much, I was losing like all the color. So I pulled the tape off the sides and just tilted it just like you would if you were doing an acrylic pour or something, and let some of that white part pour off over the side. And I'm really happy with it. I think it's very cool looking. I see some areas where I could improve, but since this is the first time I have tried to do something like this, hey, I'll take it. I'm happy with it. So let me bring you in for a close-up here. I'm sorry I'm getting so much reflection because of the resin on it now that I don't know if you can even really see. The prettiest parts of it, where the light hits it, is also where it's going to reflect the worst. So, but I'm really happy with it. I am going to let it, sit and cure now for at least a couple of weeks before it would be ready to sell or anything like that. If you're doing, oops, I just pulled my pen out. If you're doing resin, sorry, stick that back in there before it sinks down. If you're doing resin, make sure that you leave it longer than you think it should to give it a chance to be fully cured, because you don't want, especially if you're going to sell it, you don't want to package it up to ship it to someone, and then when they get it, your packaging materials are stuck to it, or have dented it in, because it's not, even though this is dry, I mean, I can play the drums on it if I want, but it's not fully cured. It would still be very easily dentable right now, and if I were to lay something on top of it, it would probably have a good likelihood of sticking to it somewhere. So just make sure that you leave them, I would say at least a couple of weeks to make sure that they are good and fully dry. And if you have time to leave them longer than that, leave them longer than that, because better safe than sorry, in my opinion. Alright, so I am sorry that this turned into such a long video. By the time I get all these things spliced together, I'm sure it's going to be one of the longer ones that I've done. But I just wanted to share it with you all, and I hope that it gives you some ideas for some things that you might want to try on your own. I will be back with you all very soon with something else. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.